Some of the greatest and most popular acts of all time only released one album before calling it quits. But why? In some cases, the answers are truly tragic. Jeff Buckley, the son of 1970s singer-songwriter Tim Buckley, possessed a soulful voice with a tremendous range that ached with emotion. Rolling Stone, which would eventually call Buckley's debut album Grace one of the greatest albums of all time, named him one of the best new artists of 1994, and he earned a Best New Artist nomination at the MTV Video Music Awards for his clip from Last Goodbye, a smash hit on alternative rock radio. Tragically, on the evening of May 29, 1997, Buckley was hanging out with a friend and decided to take a swim in the Mississippi River. He went into the water with all of his clothes on, and under the weight of a wave generated by a passing boat, Buckley was pulled under and drowned. He was 28 years old. After he died, the uncompleted songs Buckley had recorded for a second album were released in 1998. In the early 70s, Steve Jones, Paul Cook, and Glenn Matlock formed a stripped-down rock band called The Strand, inspired by British mod bands like The Who. But they embraced the emerging punk style with a 1975 edition of lead singer and general malcontent John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten. Now called the Sex Pistols, the band became a headline-grabbing act that offended older, more conservative Britons while delighting the younger ones. Bassist Sid Vicious replaced the fired Matlock in 1977, just in time for the recording of Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. It propelled punk into the mainstream, capturing a gleefully destructive attitude as well as sloppy, gritty musical stylings. The sarcastic God Save the Queen and self-evident Anarchy in the UK became massive hits and anthems for England's disaffected youth. But there was no follow-up album. Despite the band's tension, Lydon's irritation at negative press attention, and Vicious's increasing reliance on heroin, the Sex Pistols launched a U.S. tour in January 1978. At the end of a half-hearted show in San Francisco, Lydon quit the band. By the end of the year, Jones and Cook had resigned, and Vicious died of a heroin overdose. After forming in 1983, a good demo tape finally got British band The Laws signed with Go Discs in 1987. It took almost 3 more years for the group to finish and release its first self-titled album, as the band's creative force Lee Mavers struggled with perfectionism. But when it arrived in 1990, it was a success, spurred by the intercontinental hit There She Goes, which had originally been a flop when it was released as a standalone single in 1988. The album and that song are credited with helping kick off the Britpop movement, which combined alternative rock elements with classic 60s British rock. But it was the only album the band ever did, as the creative process was too difficult for Mavers to go through again, especially since he didn't even like the first album. He told Rolling Stone, "It never captured anything that we were about. To cut a long story short, too many cooks spoiled the broth."
I think our album was among the worst albums ever brought out.
The Beach Boys was a family act, populated primarily by brothers Carl, Brian, and Dennis Wilson. The group was the most successful act of the 1960s surf rock fad, but only one member did any surfing, Dennis Wilson, the band's drummer. After he injured his hand by punching a window in the early 70s, Wilson was relieved of his drumming duties, freeing him up to contribute more to the band's songwriting and increasingly lofty creative direction.
Hi, my name is Dennis Wilson. I make rock and roll records.
Amidst personal problems, including divorce and a penchant for substance abuse that would lead to his dismissal from the Beach Boys due to unreliability, Wilson spent 2 years recording Pacific Ocean Blue. Released in 1977, it initially sold about 200,000 copies, and over time would emerge as a critically acclaimed gem. Wilson was working on a second album when he tragically drowned at the age of 39 in 1983. The unfinished tracks from his never-completed second album were finally released in 2008. After playing alongside other blues rock heavy hitters in the short-lived 1960s supergroups the Yardbirds, John Mayall's Blues Breakers, Cream, and Blind Faith, Eric Clapton was firmly entrenched as one of the most praised guitarists of his generation. In 1970, he formed Derek and the Dominos, which also occasionally featured Duane Allman from the Allman Brothers Band. Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs would be the band's only studio album. While the lead-off single Layla only peaked at number 51 on the US charts, it would go on to become a rock radio staple. The first part is a loud, heavy, and blistering account of Clapton's unrequited love, Pattie Boyd, wife of his close friend, the Beatles' George Harrison, and the second, an epic, searching piano and guitar instrumental. Though the album was a critical success, tensions within the band ended things quickly. While recording a potential second album in 1971, drummer Jim Gordon spent 5 hours tuning his drums. When Clapton went to tune his instrument, Gordon patronizingly offered to do it for him. Keyboardist Bobby Whitlock told Classic Rock Revisited, "Eric got up and slammed his guitar up against the wall and went out the door. He said, 'I'll never play with you again.' That was it." Tragically, Allman died in October 1971, preventing a full Derek and the Dominos revival from ever happening. Greg Alexander put out 2 solo albums that flopped and transitioned to working behind the scenes as a hitmaker for other people. But in 1997, he took another shot at fame by forming a loose musical collective called New Radicals. The de facto band came out with Maybe You've Been Brainwashed Too, supported by the single You Get What You Give, a piano-based pop-rock anthem encouraging the youthful to stand up as one. You Get What You Give reached the top 40 in the US. But less than a year later, Alexander broke up New Radicals because he wanted to go back to making music behind the scenes for other people. He re-emerged with hired musicians for one night only in January 2021 to perform You Get What You Give during the inauguration of President Joe Biden. The tune was a font of strength for Biden's family when his son Beau was dying of cancer. And President Biden wasn't the only celebrity who loved the song.
I had that CD and I bumped it all the way to Vegas and I was just feeling it. And it's like two white boys in a mall singing or something.
In 2001, Benjamin Gibbard of the indie rock band Death Cab for Cutie met Jimmy Tamborello, an electronic musician who works under the stage name Dentel. They hit it off and recorded a song together made up of both Gibbard's emotional sensibility and Tamborello's progressive computerized sounds. The collaboration continued, with Tamborello burning CDs of instrumental tracks and mailing them to Gibbard, who'd add vocals and guitar parts. By 2003, after adding some prominent features from singer Jenny Lewis of Relo Kiley, an album was finished. Gibbard and Tamborello named the band the Postal Service, a nod to their unique song-building process. Sub Pop Records, best known for its stable of 90s grunge bands, agreed to distribute the album Give Up, expecting it to sell at most a few tens of thousands of copies. It actually sold more than 1 million units, thanks to dreamy electronic alternative rock classics like We Will Become Silhouettes and Such Great Heights. And that was it, as Gibbard, Tamborello, and Lewis returned to their main musical projects. The Postal Service reunited in 2013 and 2023 for concert tours to celebrate the anniversaries of Give Up, but it remains the group's only album. In 1993, when the popularity of grunge pushed anything even adjacent to alternative rock onto mainstream radio and MTV, 4 Non Blondes landed a top 20 hit with What's Up. Singer and songwriter Linda Perry ponders the meaning of life and her place in the world in the song, known for its earworm chorus. 4 Non Blondes would be a true one-hit wonder, never landing another song anywhere near the Billboard Hot 100. 4 Non Blondes' only full-length album, Bigger, Better, Faster, More, sold 1.5 million copies in the US and another 6 million globally. But less than a year later, Perry split up her band, telling people that making the album was a deeply unpleasant experience. I had a hard time in the band, not because of them, because I wasn't clear on the kind of music I wanted to do yet. I was just really finding myself.
I wanted to do something a little more risky, not so, pop.
While the members of 4 Non Blondes don't communicate regularly, Perry went on to make a couple of solo albums and then became a sought-after songwriter, composing hits for Pink, Gwen Stefani, Christina Aguilera, and more. Hip-hop trio The Fugees were one of the biggest acts of the mid-1990s thanks to the score. The 1996 LP featured both the rapping and singing of Lauryn Hill, who embarked on a solo career after the Fugees split up in 1997. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill sold almost 500,000 copies in its first week alone and won 5 Grammy Awards for Hill, including Album of the Year and Best New Artist. It's still regarded by many as one of the best albums ever made. But Hill quickly soured on the music industry and life as a public figure. She settled a lawsuit from the musical collective New Arc, which claimed uncredited contributions to the Miseducation. Hill became more interested in religion and spirituality and devoted more time to raising her family. Apart from a live album culled from a poorly received MTV Unplugged episode, Hill never made a second record, claiming in an email to Rolling Stone that nobody ever asked her to. Hill told the magazine, "The wild thing is no one from my label has ever called me and asked, how can we help you make another album? Ever." There were scores of tentacled obstructionists, politics, repressing agendas, unrealistic expectations, and saboteurs everywhere. One of the first bands to emerge from the Seattle grunge scene was Mother Love Bone. The band formed in early 1988 when members of the band Green River split up to join forces with Andrew Wood, the stage-commanding frontman of Malfunction. An imprint of Mercury Records released the group's slight 5-song EP Shine in 1989. That led to Mother Love Bone's debut full-length album Apple, which arrived in 1990, but the band was unable to promote it or enjoy the moment very much. 4 months before Apple was released, Wood died of an overdose of heroin at age 24. Mother Love Bone was over, though members Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament went on to help start Pearl Jam. R&B singer Cassie emerged in 2006 with a self-titled album released by Bad Boy Records, the label run by Sean Combs, also variously known as Puff Daddy and Diddy. Her debut single Me and You was a smash, topping Billboard's R&B chart and reaching number 3 on the pop chart. Further offerings from the album and compilation appearances tanked. From 2007 to 2018, Cassie was in a relationship with Combs, leading to allegations that the label was giving the singer preferential treatment that she didn't deserve. It was part of a backlash and also included a negative reaction to poor live performances, which the singer attributed to stage fright. After some leaks of incomplete songs proved she was working on new material, Cassie announced that an album called Electro Love would be released sometime in 2009. But when singles from the LP tanked, the album was shelved indefinitely and was never finished. Another record, promised for 2012, also never materialized. Cassie also dealt with the distraction of tremendous struggles in her personal life. In 2023, 5 years after her breakup with Combs, the singer filed a lawsuit accusing her former partner of multiple acts of domestic violence and sexual assault that occurred during and after the relationship. That lawsuit was settled, but it opened the floodgates for other legal action against Combs. Guitarist and singer Dave Edmunds and bassist and singer Nick Lowe both had successful solo careers before teaming up to create the rock and roll revival band Rockpile. In the late 70s, Rockpile became the backing band in the studio and on stage for both Edmunds and Lowe on their solo tours. But only once did everybody get together in one studio to record a collection of songs, and that was 1980's Seconds of Pleasure. Still, the members of Rockpile did contribute to each other's solo work in subsequent years.